Victor Davis Hanson will explain whether America will repeat history or be the exception. Blaze News The Mandate starts right now. Welcome in, everyone. I'm Jill Savage, joined as always by Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson.
Really excited about today.
There is a lot of star power today. We have Dr. Victor Davis Hanson joining us, MP.
Yeah, this guy is, he's been right about Trump from the beginning. He's explained what's going on in America, but he's also a gentleman, a scholar, and a farmer. And he has a new book called The End of Everything, about 4 civilizations that got obliterated and why. And also it serves as a warning to us that the same thing could happen to us. You never know.
Well, it's going to be a great conversation. Let's get right to it. We'll have Matt's interview with renowned historian and Hoover Institute senior fellow Victor Davis Hanson next. Well, you think that you know what you're buying at the grocery store, and then you find out that 4 billion pounds of meat were imported to the United States just last year. And the kicker is all that can be labeled like it's right here from America. That's when you have to think, like, wait a minute. What are we actually eating? If all these labels say product of the USA and the meat wasn't raised here, then what other kind of games are they playing? That's when you need to look at goodranchers.com, because you know their meat is 100% American. It's born, raised, and harvested on local farms, and it's delivered right to your door. I'm a subscriber myself, and let me tell you, it's worth every penny. You can get $40 off every box, plus free shipping and a free gift in every order for life. What's better than free meat? You can choose between the bacon, the seed oil-free chicken nuggets, the Wagyu burgers, and you can even mix them up and swap them out each month and try something new. So if you're worried about signing up for a subscription, you shouldn't be, because you can pause it, delay it, cancel it at any time. It's very flexible. Thousands of people have already made the switch, and the reviews are amazing. So head over to goodranchers.com to see what everyone's talking about. Use the code Jill. You'll get $40 off plus free meat for life with your subscription. It's goodranchers.com. Welcome to the table.
Well, welcome to another Friday deep dive here on The Mandate. It's our favorite day of the week, and here we're going to talk about some really relevant stuff by going way back to the past with none other than Victor Davis Hanson. Civilizations rise and fall, but very few are completely obliterated. And here to explain is Victor himself.
Thank you.
So tell us about the end of everything.
Well, you made a good point that usually wars don't end in the annihilation of a population, a physical space, their language, culture, traditions, that they're wiped out of memory, but it does happen. And I looked at 4 sort of iconic cases: ancient Thebes and ancient Greece, the destruction of Carthage by the Romans, the destruction of Constantinople, and the end of the Byzantines by Mehmet and the Islamic Ottomans, and then the destruction of Tenochtitlan by Cortez, and the end of the Aztec culture and language. And I tried to find out why it happened that was so unusual, and I came up with certain commonalities, that these societies were in a decline financially, economically, militarily, and they weren't really aware of it given their past preeminence. And so they were sort of naive about their ability to withstand challenges from new upstart aggressors. They also they relied on allies that they thought would help them, and the allies usually made a calculated decision to not help them when they found out they would probably lose. They had no idea about the caliber of Alexander the Great that destroyed Thebes, or Scipio who destroyed Carthage, or Cortez. It was their unfortunate experience to be up against some of the most ruthless and gifted military commanders in history. I could go on, but anyway, I had a typology of why this happened, and then the epilogue tries to suggest that it can happen again if a society is not careful and it lives on its past glory, or it underestimates the nature of its enemies and the ability of its enemies, or it counts on somebody to help them when they should be seeking self-reliance.
Now, Victor, as you know, I mean, we all know every human being alive in the West is affected in some way by this idea of history and science for the last at least 150 years in America, right? That dominates the universities. This idea that we're constantly progressing on. Quite the contrary. There couldn't be an end of everything because the arc of history, right, bends towards whatever Barack Obama wants. So this is not just the language that we use. It really is deeply, I think, embedded in the citizenry throughout the West, or at least the elites, that you can't have an end to everything. Things are progressing, and science is helping us, and we're moving forward. So, I mean, how do you counter that? I mean, this book is, in a way, the end of everything is sort of a challenge that, look, this could happen. But a lot of people they don't want to hear that. And plus they believe in something that's almost the opposite, right?
Yeah, I think that the common denominator here is human nature does not change. It's sort of like water. Water never changes, but the delivery system, whether it's an old handheld pump or a sophisticated turbine pump, can radically affect the velocity. But you don't think that a pump that pumps 7,000 gallons a minute versus one that has 3 gallons a minute, you don't think that the water is any different. And that's what human nature is. But the delivery system, science, is very different. So we confuse this, especially the modern age. We feel that because we can call somebody up in the Congo on our iPhone, or we can get the world's knowledge at our fingertips by a Google search, and therefore that we have evolved morally, intellectually, psychologically, in a way, and that we have changed human nature, but we haven't. And that's not under dispute. If you look at the 20th century, more people were killed in the sophisticated 20th century than all centuries combined in wars. I mean, Mao Zedong killed over 70 million. Joseph Stalin killed 20 million. 65 to 70 million were killed in World War II, probably 25 million in World War I. So this dwarfed Alexander the Great, Caesar. It dwarfed the Spanish Empire, the 30 Years' War, 7 Years' War, Napoleonic Wars, because of science had evolved, but it has nothing to do with morality or wisdom. That's innate to humans. And you think that maybe the only chance for optimism is while human nature stays static, they can look back at the past, and there are the data of examples and reference grows. So people can say, we now know why wars start, how they progress, and how they end, and maybe we can prevent them. But at the same time we do that, and your point is that we have this sort of arrogance. So we know that wars start because of the lack of deterrence, that there's always evil people there, and they will always take advantage of a weak opponent, and we know how they end. But at the same time we have that aggregate wisdom of the ages, we also have another school of thought that feels, well, technology gets more sophisticated. Humans are getting bigger and stronger and healthier. Therefore, they have evolved. And now, if we just give us enough power, we can abolish war. We can have the International Criminal Court or the UN. We can make by fiat war obsolete or illegal. And of course, that's a very dangerous concept.
Yeah, terrifying to me. It feels as if if that really envelops you, you're flying blind and arrogantly. But let's talk about that. I mean, let's move at the end of everything. This idea that these factors can combine to lead to actually obliteration. Let's talk about America now and the kind of conflict that we see here within America. A big fan of a lot of the things you've been writing over the years in all respects. And I was thinking about this topic, and it made me think of Angelo Codevilla, late, great Angelo Codevilla, an essay that he wrote once.
He's a good friend of mine, yeah.
Yes. Sorely missed by myself and everyone at Claremont. But he wrote an essay about our revolution's logic. And he mentions Coursera and Thucydides He described 2016, right, as a revolution against the ruling class, and that we were now engaged in a back and forth where, recrimination and you basically were stuck in a spiral now, where each side is going to fight until one of them wins. I don't know, to what extent you agree with that, but how would you describe the conflict within the United States right now?
Well, I think why the left is melting down is that most past presidential candidates on the Republican side, and even presidents, I'm talking specifically about a Mitt Romney's campaign or John McCain or the two Bushes campaign, maybe Reagan was an exception, but the Bob Dole campaign, their attitude was that we're going to slow down the progressive agenda or the march through the institutions, but it's kind of faded since the FDR, and so we're going to modulate it, moderate it. And then Trump came along, and he said, "You don't have to be a minority party. You can recapture the middle class through a nationalist, populist agenda," and that was be skeptical of globalization, try to invest in the American muscular classes, don't get into endless wars in the Middle East on the ground, develop all of your resources, et cetera, et cetera. And that was kind of like the first term, and he had a lot of successes, but I think in the wilderness years of the 4 years of the Biden administration, he learned a lot from that. So there are no Jim Mattises, there are no Rex Tillersons, there's no Bill Barrs, there's none of the Washington bipartisan John Bolton type elites. So what he did this time is he said, it's not enough to address the symptoms of the progressive project. You've got to go to the source. And the source, we know what it is. The source is they're trying to change the demography by massive illegal migration, 30 million illegal immigrants, 10,000 a day under Biden. They have captured the universities. They're not disinterested. They're sources of bias. The media like PBS, NPR are propagandistic. The corporate boardroom, foundations, etc. We need to start looking at the university's tax endowment, look at their surcharges. So what I'm getting at is this was a counter-revolution, and it's holistic, it's cultural, economic, financial, political. He's saying, we're going to look at classical architecture. We're going to go back and look at the air traffic controller test. Almost every aspect of what we thought was settled, the DEI, affirmative action, racial obsessions, critical legal theory, critical race theory, critical modern monetary theory, inflationary is printing money is not that bad. He's questioning. So this is a counter-revolution. And it's very controversial because he's trying to wage it in 4 years, but specifically in 1 year. We're not even into the first year. And I think people are shocked at it because it's much harder to undo 4 years of what was a progressive revolution with just a year of counter-revolution. But it's addressing the symptoms of what manifests itself for the last 50 or 60 or maybe 80 years. And we'll see if he's going to be successful in 4 years and he can pass on that torch to somebody to continue it. But it's a very radical, ambitious, common sense, back to normality counter-revolution.
Let's talk about the vision between the sides, because this, I would put it this way. I mean, a year ago, right, if you and I were talking, at least on my side, I would feel very differently than I do right now, right? I think most people on the right, went through the doldrums and thought, we are in the depths of, we disagree about what citizenship is. We disagree about what the nation state is. We disagree about what men and women are. We disagree about the basic, fundamental aspects of human life. And you had to wonder, how do you keep something together when you have, a polis, you have a citizenry that's so divided on these fundamental issues? And it felt as if, everyone was being oppressed as a censorship regime. There was a lot of real active measures, right, taken by the left during that time, as you say. And that division's still there, right? But people on the right now feel as if, hey, we won, and Trump is obviously moving this counter-revolution forward, and yet the division is still there, and this counter-revolution, as you say, it's in a year is a short period of time, but it's moving forward, and right now it looks like it's winning. It's winning culturally. It's winning in polls. It looks like there has been a large cultural and political shift. So, I mean, I guess a lot of people feel very optimistic right now. Do you share their optimism?
I think I'm older than you, but I remember the 1984 Apple commercial where a woman runs in with a hammer. Do you remember that? And she throws it into a Big Brother screen and it shatters it. And the idea was Apple has revolutionized the old IBM Nexus or something. And I think the left, because they had all of these institutional levers, the corporate boardroom, K through 12, academia, the foundations, popular culture, sports, of course, the media and the elite universities. Everybody thought that represented a consensus when it never did. It was a minority of the bicoastal elites thinking. They were in a minority, but it took somebody who basically came in like a Shane type character or Magnificent Seven, somebody out of a John Ford maybe Western, who had a different set of skill, a Clint Eastwood or John Wayne, and they just basically said, you people are ossified, you're calcified, you don't know what to do, but I have some skill sets that can take on this burden, the proverbial banditos or cattle barons. But you're not going to like what I do because I have to, I tweet loudly and I don't care what people think of me. And I go tit for tat to anybody who attacks me. And I look garish and I'll do things, but I will solve the problem. And that's kind of what Trump is doing. He's kind of a tragic hero. And the dilemma is that when somebody is a gifted person like that and he starts to make change, he reaches a point where people can start to feel the change and appreciate it, and they get lax. And they say, well, wow, did we really want to have him come in? And wow, he tweets too much. But they don't want to accept that type of modality was necessary given the nature of the opposition, and they bought into it. So you'll see Trump's popularity undulate depending on how many left-wing newscasts show ICE arresting somebody who's screaming on the ground without any context that he's a possible pedophile or a likely pedophile and shouldn't have been here at all and was deported 3 or 4 times. But by and large, Trump understood that he picks issues, the transgendered issue, the illegal immigration issue, the crime issue, deterrence abroad, where he knows that there's a 40-60 majority on his side. And he's very clever about that. When he took out the Iranian installations, almost immediately he said he wanted to make Iran great. They wanted to have a performance art celebratory attack on our facilities in Qatar. He said that's fine as long as you don't hurt one hair on an American head. And then he said they had to get out of their system. There's no longer war. So he understood the MAGA base, and he understood the need for deterrence, and he understood where the public was on each of those issues, and he adapted. I think he's very underrated as a politician, and that's part of the reasons that I cannot believe that he polls, depending on the left-wing polls, 43 to 45%, and on the conservative and actually more accurate in the 2024 polls, he's polling between 50 and 55. And that, I think, is phenomenal given the magnitude of change that he's embarking on. But he's a very good politician. He knows where the middle class is on every issue, and that's the majority of America.
It makes it an exciting time to be alive, and it's just been an incredible, year, I think, for everyone, going through that election cycle and just seeing all this happen in real time. I mean, these people online, they'll say nothing ever happens, right? And there's a phrase online. I kind of like it. Nothing ever happens. Don't worry. But right now, I feel like everything happens all the time. There's a lot of things that are actually in motion.
It's incredible. I'm sitting here in the Stanford campus, and if we had this conversation a year ago, and somebody had said to me, they're going to uncover this scandal that Stanford researchers are charging the federal government 50 to 60, 70% overhead on what was really $1 billion of federal energy grants, HHS, and it's going to stop. Or if somebody said, they're going to enforce the 2023 Supreme Court rule, and there's not going to be any more quote unquote theme houses that are 99% exclusive to one particular race. You're not going to have any auxiliary graduation ceremonies that are 99% exclusive to one race. Or they're going to look very carefully where you're getting your money from China. They're going to look very carefully and tax your endowments. And they're going to withhold federal money unless you can ensure First Amendment rights for visiting. I would have thought that's crazy. They're so arrogant. They're so powerful. They have these multi-billion-dollar endowments. No president in his right mind would take these universities on. And he did. And he's winning. And it's astounding. And the same thing with the Smithsonian, the same thing with NPR. NPR was sacrosanct. And all of a sudden, it's just like that. It's like the emperor has no clothes. He understands that people where they are, and he's saying these people are buck naked.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the only one in the crowd who can see it. But once I tell you that they're naked, you will agree that they're naked, and therefore we won't have anything to do with them. And that's what he's doing.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's so well said. And it's the prestige ladder that younger people are trying to climb. It doesn't exist anymore. And people are realizing that the credibility of these institutions is gone. But let's I'm going to go back to education in a bit. But let's talk about the Democrats and the response of the left so far, because you're a keen observer of these movements, and what we've seen since the election, is a lot of talk about doubling down. We need to get meaner, we need to get tougher, is what they're saying to themselves. And of course, for them, this has always been supposedly about saving democracy itself. They used existential language, they were eating that stuff like candy for years. Since the emergence of Trump, this has been an existential crisis for the left. Democracy itself, right, is our very form of government is what is being threatened. And now, lo and behold, right, literally Hitler, as they say, is sitting, in the White House doing all this stuff, and it's popular. So how do you read their response, and where do you think they go from here?
Well, there's the immediate, and then there's the existential explanation for where they are, which is in chaos. They don't have any political power. They've lost the House. They've lost the Senate. They do not have the White House. And they don't have the Supreme Court. They do have the lower courts, but they can ultimately be overturned by the Supreme Court. And more importantly, they set certain precedents. Obama's use of executive orders, for example, that are very convenient for a powerful Republican president like Trump. So they're frustrated that they can't affect anything politically. And then they thought they could use extra legal methods. So they raided Mar-a-Lago. They had 93 criminal indictments. If you count E. Jean Carroll's crazy suit, 5 different courtrooms, 25 states were trying to get him off the ballot. They impeached him twice his first term. They tried him as a private citizen, 2 assassination attempts. And he's a Nietzschean character that it just made him stronger. The more they tried to destroy him, the stronger. So that frustrated them. And then so that manifests itself kind of immediately in hitting watermelons with a club or a bat, or Hakeem Jeffries posing with a bat, or Jasmine Crockett scatology, all of this SH stuff, or Cory Booker with these crazy pseudo filibusters, or these Texas people and this performance art fleeing to Chicago. So they're so frustrated that they, most recently a mariachi band and all this, are screaming. So that's a symptom that they tried to destroy them, and in the process, they destroyed institutions. They were willing to do that by waging lawfare. We've never seen any of those things I just mentioned, raiding a ex-president's house, or trying to remove a major candidate of one of the parties from the ballot. But it all failed, and now they have no political power. So then the question is, why did they get in this position? And I think the answer is that they became the party of the subsidized poor and the very upper middle class, professional classes, and the billionaire class. 9 trillion market capitalization in Silicon Valley, the Zuckerbergs, Soros, all those people, and Bloomberg, all of them. And the reason was, I think they thought that globalization that enriched the two coasts who had global skills. They had a market suddenly of 6 billion people with media, law, investment, hedge funds, universities. And then the people in the middle who were muscular and lost out on manufacturing, assembly, resource exploitation, oil, gas, those type of workers that were offshored or outsourced. They created a kind of a narrative. We're the smart people. That's why we're wealthy. That's why San Francisco and LA in the 90s and the early century of the 21st are so much better than you people. And that's why the people on the East Coast are so much better. And you people are clingers and deplorables and irredeemables and chumps and drags and most lately garbage, because we're the winners. And now that we've won and we're affluent, we're not subject to the consequences of our ideology. We can use you as lab rats. So we'll try transgender on you. We'll try the new Green Deal. We'll have solar wind mandates. We don't care what the kilowatt price is. We don't care what gas prices are, because we're protected by our wealth and our degrees and our zip codes. And that changed the Democratic Party. If you go back in 92 and 96 and look at their convention statements under Clinton, my God, they're to the right almost of Republicans. We got to close the border. Illegal immigration has to end. We have to deport people. Juveniles who commit crime should be tried as adults. We need more police officers. We need to balance the budget. That was the Clinton response to McGovernism and Carterism. But so what I'm getting at is that this demographic change, or this economic or financial change, made it a party of, well, we don't have any popular middle class anymore. We don't want them. All we need to do is open the borders, subsidize the poor, subsidize the non-white, and concentrate on the power of money to influence the media, and your Google searches the order of your Google searches will be affected. We have insidious ways of retaining power without popularity. And somebody came along and beat them at their own game. And that was Trump, who was a master of the media, who was a master of alternate media, popular culture. And that creates a lot of frustration on their part as well. They thought that they were transforming to a net zero world, Green New Deal, DEI. It wasn't just DEI or affirmative action. There was a new vitriolic anti-white, and you saw that with Joy Reid the other day. You saw that with the New Yorker writer Doreen St. Felice. It was acceptable now to say that 70% of the country were stupid, or they smell, as this New York writer had said, or what Jasmine Crockett says. And all of that was going to be institutionalized. And that was part of the new Democratic Party. And Trump came along and said, I don't think most people like this stuff. And I'm going to find out who they are that don't like it. I'm going to get them out to vote. And it was very hard in 2016 and 2020, but he learned. And the final thing is, maybe the best thing was that he did lose 2020, because he learned in those wilderness years exactly how the left got power and how to neutralize it. And then when he came back in, he said, I'm going to appoint people on my ideological turf. It's not going to be any more of these first-term people. And I'm going to actually appoint people who have been victims of the very agency they're going to run, like a Kash Patel or Tulsi Gabbard or Jay Bhattacharya, so I can trust them. And it's been a remarkable first 8 months how effective he's been. And I thought by now he'd be polling 30% given the magnitude of the counter-revolution, but it's just amazing what he's been doing.
Yeah, and to see it reflected with such influence throughout the entire culture. Some of these cultural moments, like the Sydney Sweeney gene ad. I mean, Sydney Sweeney has good genes would have been illegal a year ago. I feel like, but you
absolutely. I mean, he understood that immediately. It was on so many levels. Here was a young girl, and she looked like a girl. She was full-breasted. She had curves, and all of a sudden, the Mulvaney thing was over with, or the Lizzo thing was over with. And she was proud of being sexy and young and attractive. And the commercial people said, we're going to make money on this because people really silently and quietly agree with us. And then Trump saw that and glommed onto it. And so, yeah, it's a multifaceted. It reminds me so much of the Thermidor reaction to the Jacobins. The Robespierre brothers were put out of business by a counter-revolution, and they were exactly like the left. We have 1619, they had year zero. Our people are secularist or atheist or agnostics. They were Ratio was going to be their supreme deity, reason. And it was trying to rename the days of the week, the new months, everything. It was a holistic revolution. And then suddenly and then of course they got Napoleon as a result. But Donald Trump has been very successful, and he's got people around him who are so much more gifted and knowledgeable. And I'm not making fun of the first term, but they didn't think they were going to win, so they were unprepared when they did win in 2016. But this time they must have studied the left chapter and verse, because they really know how to push their buttons. And maybe one of the legacies of Donald Trump, besides his positive contributions, will be he had a unique, uncanny ability to make the Democrats expose themselves in a way that they really are, and is very repulsive and off-putting to the public. And every time he gets in a fight with one of them, they lose, and they start to show their hypocrisy and paradoxes in a very negative fashion to the public.
No, exactly. And this administration, I mean, I would, I'll put it this way. We just take Claremont, my Claremont Association. Last time the biggest thing that we would work on, right, was getting people in who actually understood the agenda. And there weren't a lot of people, right? I mean, some people rose in the first administration because they said, get that kid who understands what the president is trying to do, because it was incomprehensible, as you pointed out to a lot of these people. They couldn't even understand it. This time, you can go walk around the Eisenhower building and high five all the Claremont fellows, that we were all together for the last 6 years.
And it's very hard for the left. I think they're so confused, because if you take that Madison Square entourage, suddenly he walks in and there's Dana White, there's Joe Rogan, there's the late Hulk Hogan, but there's also RFK and Tulsi Gabbard and Speaker Johnson. It's like a menagerie of popular cultural heroes, some people from the left that have gone to join him. And he's not a predictable Republican. And he's more conservative in many ways than a predictable Republican, but he's transactional, utilitarian as well. And he's able to get people in various aspects of his agenda to come on board. And a lot of them are not traditional Republicans and conservatives, and that drives the left crazy. RFK drives them absolutely insane. And Joe Rogan, to the extent, and Elon Musk was the same way. And it's what he's done with Silicon Valley. He's basically gone to Silicon Valley to Andreessen and David Sachs and Peter Thiel and all of them, and Elon Musk for a while, and probably in the future. He said to them, I'm kind of like the war production war to World War II. I don't care what your politics are. I just want to win. And you guys are being censored by Europe, and you're getting your stuff stolen by China, and your country is falling apart. So here it is, a blank check. You go do what you do. Make money for yourself, but make money for your country. And it's kind of like FDR, who was a socialist, telling Henry Knudsen of GM and Henry Kaiser and Henry Ford, William Knudsen and Henry Ford and Henry Kaiser, make money, but build me Liberty ships and B-24s more than the Germans, the Japanese, and the Italians combined, and we'll win. And that's a very weird message, but it appeals to a lot of people that are not political, even on the left. This guy comes along and he says, wow, he's going to protect us from European censorship.
Exactly.
Canada wants to have a retrogressive tax and take $2 billion from Silicon Valley, and Trump is going to tell them if they do that, they're going to be in big trouble, and they back down. So it's really bizarre. It takes sometimes it's hard to follow, but it's the one common denominator is he wants to see the United States preeminent in every aspect: culture, economics, politics, military, and he's got a great trust in the American people that they're preeminent people. They're not just one of many. It's completely antithetical to the Obama mission statement.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't help but go into a little bit about you in this interview, because here you are sitting in Stanford from your commute from the fields, and I'm very curious about your life and how you've lived it, and your own self-reflection on how this has impacted your thought and your work. I mean, you're writing books like The End of Everything, and you've consistently, I believe, been right in one place, or been associated with. You have a farm. You've been there for a while.
I still
right?
live there. It's 200 miles away. I commute every week.
Yeah.
And so, anybody that grows up on a farm, and it's been in my family 6 generations, but when you're 18, you have to work after school, and you have to do your chores, and you can't go into town, so you want to go away. So my brothers and I went to UC Santa Cruz, a really radical place when it first opened. Then I went to Stanford as a graduate student. But my mother had done the same thing. My grandfather had mortgaged his little farm and sent his daughters to Stanford in the 1930s and 40s. But they all came back. And he did that because he thought that they would be able to save the farm if they were educated. He never went to college. But my point is that my parents told me, you've got to get an education and be exposed to the world. I lived overseas for 3 years, but you'll never find a better moral climate than a small farm in the Central Valley. And don't let anything go to your head. So during graduate school, I would come home every 2 weeks and drive a tractor. And I was a visiting professor at Stanford, and I came home every week. And I still chose not to live here. I have an apartment here, but I stay 90% or 80% of my time, if you count Christmas and vacation, and the commute on my farm in southwest Fresno County. And it's been very valuable to me because I could tell that Trump was going to win, and I wrote that in 2024 because my wife and I we live in a community that's 95% Hispanic. In 2016 and 2020, I'd say they were negative, 55-45 Trump. But I would say to my wife, I just went into Food for Less. 8 people came up to me and said they were worried Trump was not going to win. They were all Hispanic males. And I said, how about you? And she said, I've never seen one Hispanic male who's going to vote for Harris. And you get a very different view than the academic life and the values. And it was very important for me as a supposed intellectual or writer to live with people who were not like that. And then when I'm home, I'm never judged on what I say or write. It's always, our pump went out the other day, and I called a guy, and he said, well, you know where the capacitor is? Yes. Try the capacitor first, then the pressure gauge. And then I'll come over if it's the bearing in the pump. But if I had said, well, I don't know what you're talking about, I would have been ridiculed. So I grew up, and then when I left graduate school with a PhD, there wasn't a lot of jobs for white males in Greek and Latin in the 1980s. So I just farmed full-time for 5 years with my grandparents and my parents. my twin brother and I ran the farm. In those days, it was pretty big, 180 acres. So it was a lot of work, and then I would go up to Fresno State where I taught every day for the next 10 years and do both. So it's been very hectic and stressful, but it's been very good for me to live with people who were poor or middle class. And when I come up here, I don't take Stanford professors very seriously. And, I get a lot of hostility, but it doesn't bother me. I'd be much more worried if people in my hometown didn't like me. But they seem to like the idea that I live there. And they'll always come up and say, are those people at Stanford as crazy as they seem? Yes, they are. They're crazy. And that's kind of the life. It's been schizophrenic. It's, sometimes I'll come home and I'll have a sport jacket from Hoover, and somebody said, why are you wearing a jacket? Or sometimes I'll go to Hoover and I'll have an ag cap on. It goes, what is Bennett and Bennett? I said, it's a concrete pipe company. So, and you just forget which world you're in because they're so antithetical to each other. It's not like there's no bridge between them. Mm-hmm. One is red state traditionalism, even though it's been metamorphosized with immigration, and the other is bicoastal cosmopolitan utopianism.
Exactly right. The two worlds apart that you bridge, but that is also, I think, the source of a lot of wisdom and a lot of wisdom that we've heard from you today. I have to, before we go, I have to say, I want to invite, I'm going to propose this. We have this magazine, Frontier, which I should send you a copy of. This is the first edition. It's beautiful. It's big. It's got, great photography, and it's really, positive vision of what's going on around the country. It's not directly political. But what I would love to do is do a profile of you for that magazine, and hopefully even some photography and some bit about your life. We would love to do that. I think our audience would be very interested in it. And unlike so many other publications, I'm keeping direct politics out of it, right? It's not that we're apolitical, but this is actually a profile about what should be very interesting to a lot of people, which is the manner in which you've kept those roots and that life, and then also contributed to the intellectual discourse.
Yeah, that'll be one. I'll look forward to that and follow it up. Yeah, I always, when people have called me that are apolitical or on the center right, I always try to say yes. But on the left, it's not that I'm overly political or paranoid, but I've had people from the New Yorker do this or the Washington Post, and it's always been a disaster.
Oh yeah.
They'll say, I'm not political. I just want to talk, and then they'll come out and say, I saw a Hispanic man driving a tractor for Mr. Hanson.
Right.
And I wanted to know how much he was making, or I saw a pesticide container nearby that I didn't think was properly stored, or something like that. I always welcome people that are disinterested.
It self-selects here because those people won't work for me. But what you find is a number of people, in all these industries who are now coming out of the woodwork because of the counter-revolution you describe, who are photographers or videographers, who are very interested in this kind of thing. In any event, everyone should get this book. The End of Everything is a topic that concerns everyone. What's the best way for them to get it, Victor?
I think it's just to go on either Amazon or victorhanson.com. I think there's a discount. I have a button there on my website. It's all small letters, HANSON.com, victorhanson.com.
Great. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. But first, at Blaze Media, truth, freedom, and faith in God and country aren't just slogans. They're values that we live by every single day. And we want to give you something to carry into your week that'll keep you grounded in those values. So starting Sunday, we're launching a brand new series called Sunday Revival. Every Sunday morning on Blaze TV, you'll get inspiring messages from voices like Pastor Jack Graham of Prestonwood Baptist, Pastor Alan Jackson of World Outreach Church, and many more. So no matter how chaotic the world feels, Sunday Revival is here to help you grow in your faith and stay rooted in God's Word and start your week with purpose. So join us this Sunday on Blaze TV. So Matt, when we get back to our conversation with Victor Davis Hanson, what sticks out to you?
I mean, first off, he's just one of my favorite people. He's lived an incredible life. He's still living it, and kind of an example of how you could be an intellectual and an academic and also remain grounded and rooted, because he's always coming from the farm. So that stuck out to me the most, just his description of his life, staying close to a family farm, 200 acres for generations, and then commuting into Stanford with, as he says, all the crazy people there, and being the one speaking the truth,
I love that he was talking about the captured universities, and there he is, just driving into a university every day for work.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's how he knows, right?
Yes.
He knows how bad. Anyone who's been in those universities, you know how bad it is. And so he's also, he started out as a scholar, right? He wrote a lot about the ancient Greeks. He's written about warfare. He's really, really a bright guy. But this book, The End of Everything, is the kind of book that's for everyone, because it is, in a way, scholarship. It's history, but it's his take on all these four ancient civilizations, or older civilizations, from the Aztecs all the way back to ancient Thebes, were completely obliterated, destroyed. And it's a kind of a warning of what to look for and what to avoid so that doesn't happen again. But he's one of the foremost people in the country who understands Trump and MAGA and what's going on in the United States of America.
And he talked about a counter-revolution, and it feels like right now there is one taking place. Like the United States, it's not just all the leftist garbage that we've had to deal with for years and years and years.
Yeah, so I worry sometimes that I might be too optimistic about what's going on now, which might be hilarious to a lot of my friends, because I'm usually pretty cynical.
We have to tell you, no black pilling, black pilling.
So I tell everyone, no black pilling. The kids are right. We're going to stay positive. And I think what was positive to me about this was VDH was really affirming. Victor Davis Hanson was affirming that. No, this counter-revolution is real. It's something that he sees as well, and it's good to have that data point as we move about the cabin, because I see it. But Victor was saying, he thinks the same thing. This is a real counter-revolution. It's happening in real time, and that's a great thing.
And I can't wait to see him in Frontier Magazine. I love how you snuck that in there at the end.
Yeah, so Peter, he's been waiting for me to do that. I mean, look, this was the first one. I mean, that was the first issue, and then we went to space.
That's right from the farm,
right? We went to space. It's one of Elon's favorite photographers with one of Elon's rockets, and now for summer, this is where we're at now. Now we're sailing with the America's Cup team. So Victor's farm has to be in there, because don't you wonder what it looks like? I mean, this guy comes on. You've seen him on all these shows. It goes on Fox all the time. What does this farm actually look like? And, how does he live his life? I think that'd be a really interesting profile for Frontier.
A brilliant man.
Yes.
Doing brilliant things. That's exactly what we want here on the show. And Matt, I know that you enjoyed that. I enjoyed that interview. That's one of my favorites that you've done so far.
Yeah, it's a fun job.
It's not bad. It's not bad. Well, thanks for joining us here, everybody. We will be back once again on Monday. So everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you then.